Focusing on the needs of multiple feminist populations. And what we want to do now is try to expand it and fill the needs of many of the people in the Washington, D.C. area. And that includes national organizations that have chapters and some presence here that might be able to attend meetings and exchange information, as well as individuals and organizations that are more local, like Montgomery County Now and other organizations. So what I'd like to do is just to help you give a little introduction of why we're considering expanding our collaboration activities and providing more leadership in this area, since we're sort of a multi-focused organization. So we want to, of course, build on our clearinghouse on women's issues, dissemination capacity. One of the things that we are lucky to have, one of our board members who wasn't able to come now is Connie Cordovilla, and Connie works on women's and other community issues at the American Federation of Teachers. She's developed a very large email list of people who are interested in women's issues. Some of you may already be on Connie's list. I also have an email list of individuals that I call DC Feminist Friends. So we also have our website, which has a lot of our newsletters where we've covered many women's issues in depth. So we have a good background to try to expand our multi-focused coverage and provide some leadership in the DC area. But of course, with this type of leadership, we need a lot of participation. The leadership is also especially needed now because one of the major organizations that used to provide this collaborative leadership, the National Council of Women's Organizations, no longer exists. And so we want to fill their bill. One of the things that they did that CWI benefited from is they had an extensive email list also to organizations. And what we did with that email list is we invite people to our CWI meetings. And then once the organizations, of course, receive the information from CWI and other places, they shared it widely with the members of their organization. So it's a big multiplier strategy that we want to reactivate and help with. However, we don't want to do some of the major costly activities that National Council of Women's Organizations did that may have contributed to their death, like hiring people to run the organization and like really trying to get collaborative agreement among all the organizations on key issues and developing their own position papers and meetings with Congress. What we want to do is we want to facilitate all of the organizations to select what's important to them. We also want to retain our Clearinghouse on Women's Issues volunteer framework. So, for example, I want to especially thank our Clearinghouse board members who contributed the major food for our potluck today. And we volunteer in many other ways as board members of many organizations do. And we also want to thank the Alliance for Justice, which has volunteered this space. So we're trying to maintain this leadership on a volunteer basis. We also think that what's needed is to provide a space for collaboration on feminist issues of smaller organizations, and think that we've been doing that, but we want to increase that opportunity. Of course, we focus on a wide range of feminist issues pushed by national organizations and local organizations. And as was mentioned earlier, we've been in existence for 44 years. We have a good track record. We want to do more than we've done in the past of building on specialized networks. For example, there's the network called the National Coalition for Women and Girls in Education, which just had a big Hill event celebrating Title IX's 45th anniversary and issued a big report. And we want to know more about other specialized networks. I'm glad we have a representative from the Women's Health Network here. And we need to work more with people who are involved in women in development. And on global issues, we need to work more with the groups that are working on anti-violence against women, Women's History Network. For example, we might have an opportunity to get Molly McGregor from the National Women's History Project here for our March meeting when she comes from California for annual luncheon celebration and honoring famous women who have been contributing. We want to maintain procedures for both organizational and individual memberships, as the Clearinghouse does, as you saw. And most of all, we want to have principles that are win-win for everybody who's participating. For example, CWI, by involving other organizations in our expanded effort here, could expand our board, have more of you join our CWI board, and get more strategies. And Martin, after we have a wonderful presentation from Una and Ali on the types of organizations we've identified, will lead a discussion soliciting brainstorming ideas from you all on ways that we can make this expanded collaboration of feminist groups in the DC area much more effective and efficient, and that might fit the needs of organizations that you're members of or representing. So let me turn the presentation over to Ali and Una, who have been kind enough to help us recreate or create an in-progress list of feminist organizations to have a presence in the DC area. And I think you'll find that what they have is very exciting, and they'll tell you how you can contribute further to increasing this list. All yours.
So yeah, as I said before, I'm Una. I'm an intern with FMF this summer, and one of the major projects that Ali and I have been working on is creating a list, which we think is pretty extensive, but by no means exhaustive, of organizations related to women's rights and advocacy, most of them in the DC area, and we're hoping that this list, which includes sort of subject focus, website, contact information, will help CWI facilitate communication and collaboration between these groups. So Allie's passing around a couple copies of it right now.
We don't have enough for everyone, so please share.
Yeah, share with your neighbor. And we've grouped them, as we said, according to focus fields. For example, reproductive rights, advocacy for African American women, Latino women, education equity. There are a bunch of different categories. And then a lot, of course, of the organizations are sort of just focused on general women's advocacy. And we found, I think, about 112 organizations so far, so a bunch, but not all of them, certainly. That includes like 16 education equity organizations. I think there was about 10 reproductive rights groups and many other focuses. And we started with a list that FMF has of women's organizations and sort of built upon it, compiling a lot of other lists as well. And where possible, we've included a relevant contact and their phone number and email, so you all have it. And
yeah, so feel free to correct if you see any misspellings or typos, or if you know that an organization no longer exists, or if their name has changed, please feel free to correct. Or if you know any contact people in that organization, go ahead and write it in. This is by no means an exhaustive list. There are obviously tons and tons of feminist organizations in the DC area and nationally. And so we know this is an ongoing effort, and we want to include all the contacts that y'all have and build a broader network. We did identify some areas for improvement for our list. There's some holes that need to be filled. We really want more information on women of color specific groups and see if we can.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
When you keep someone in the chair, it screws the focus.
Oh, okay. We really, as I was saying, we want more women of color centered or specific groups that advocate for women of color specific issues. We also do not have very many LGBTQ plus groups, and we would like more of those on our list that work on LGBTQ specific issues and advocacy. We're also hoping to learn more about any existing networks or coalitions that exist among these groups. And so if you are involved in leadership of these organizations and know of any coalitions that already exist, please tell us. Again, we're passing along the list now, so feel free to take notes in it, write down any more information you have, make corrections.
Another thing, if you would like to be on this list and you're not, please write a piece of paper right now.
We have a sign-up sheet, so if you're not, if your organization is not on this list and they would like to be, or if you know of another organization that you think should be on this list, please feel free to write down the name, the focus area, location. So if it's based in DC, just write based in DC. You don't have to write the address, a contact, an email, and a phone number.
And Harriet just pointed out that CWI wasn't on it.
Oh,
There's a good organizations engaging men and boys. It's a large category.
Okay, let's pass that on right now.
So yeah, that's another great idea. If you have any ideas, not for specific organizations, but just like different areas in which we should look, like organizations engaging men and boys, that would be awesome if you could also write that down, just so we can.
And there are several of these throughout the room. So I put one on that side, one on this side, and one on that end, and then table one on this end.
Could you also mention the Women's World Wide Web thing?
Oh, yeah. So that was one of the lists that we pulled organizations with. There are other organizations that are sort of undergoing similar efforts, so it might be useful to collaborate with them. There's one website that Sue found called Worldwide Women, worldwidewomen.com, I believe, that is sort of meant to be a compilation of women's organizations. So it's not the exact same focus, because they've also included sort of more women-run businesses and stuff like that, not specifically women's advocacy groups.
Congratulations to you for putting this together. It's a fine piece of work.
And one of the things that we can use this list for, especially if people join CWI, is we can use the list to communicate more broadly with all of these organizations. But what we would like is as many organizations as possible to help us join CWI specifically. Any specific questions for Una and Ally right now? And fill in the form so we have additional information.
So I see the YMCA here. Is there no longer a YWCA?
I don't believe there is. Do you think?
I think there is a YWCA, but I think probably neither of them call themselves by the old full name. The Young Men's or Young Women's Christian Association, they just use the initials. And that's true of other organizations, AARP and
Is
things
it
like
not?
that. They
But
keep,
the YW is not here. So
okay, so
Go
add
ahead,
it,
write it down
add
in
it,
business.
add
I
it,
don't know.
add it.
They are.
Oh, okay.
Yep, as a matter of fact, we have Catherine Bean on one of our lists who we invited to this meeting, but she said she was traveling today, so she couldn't come. But she does represent the YWCA, so good
Okay,
point.
yeah, right on 14th Street.
So just,
And also, Al, the Older Women's League, are they still in business?
Yes.
We need to add them to the list.
so add all
Just
of
go
these
ahead and write
names.
it down.
Maybe could you review what constitutes an outreach to membership
What
for this
were-
group?
what
Like
were-
men can stop rape, would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't have to be just an organization of women. Just if you think an organization is
That
might
deals with the
share
feminist
the
issue.
clearinghouse
Like,
goals
We'd
and
love to have it as inclusive as we could.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, we want it to be feminist, focusing on women's
Which is
issues and women's rights.
Broad.
Right.
Women's, we need more women's health organizations.
Yeah, definitely.
We need more organizations of women of color
And I think it's important, especially if there are small organizations that you know about, because those could definitely use support and build coalition with each other, smaller local organizations as well.
or it could also be a national organization which has a major focus on women's issues.
Right.
So anything goes, as long as it's focusing on women's rights types of things, not against them. We don't want antis particularly.
So
How are you recruiting and what are you offering to the other organizations you're asking to join?
Good point. Some of those we're in process on, and Anna's going to lead the discussion on that. But recruiting right now is by having this meeting to get started and getting ideas and helping people understand the value of being part of an organization that can provide more information and where the organizations might be able to present at some of our monthly meetings on key issues of interest to everybody. Ann, you want to take over your part?
Okay, I really don't have a part. This is your part because we're going to have an open ideas sharing about, just as Sue said, women's organization and sport organizations. And why don't we start with your question? And that is, what could the clearinghouse, as a clearinghouse, do for all of these organizations, particularly smaller organizations or those in a particular focus area like women in science or physicians. So Sue described what the NCWO was charged with doing, and we felt like there needed to be a framework or an organization where word could come in and go back out to all organizations, that your focus, your outreach would be much expanded. So tell us what you would want with the clearinghouse of women's organizations. You're nodding your head. You want to start?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I'm unfamiliar with the organization that you mentioned and how they disseminated information, but for me, as a newcomer in this space, I'm thinking the thing that I could find of value is a way to get the word out about programs that each one of our respective organizations is having, or initiatives, or just tools of engagement that our respective organizations are having. I don't know if that looks like a monthly newsletter. I don't know if that looks like an actual resource book that can be published biannually. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I'm thinking the immediate need, at least for me as a newcomer to all of this, is a way for information to be shared so that I can support other organizations and they can support us.
Good point. I will just mention that it's certainly in the context of all of you, it's hardly sufficient, but with their newsletter, which is monthly, there is a listing of other organizations' activities. But you compare this month's newsletter with this list of organizations, and it's woefully short. In the speed of things, particularly with the Women's March activities continuing, and we hope many more marches and demonstrations just like today coming up, that monthly is just too late. It needs to be, and now that we have internet, it needs to be daily, every 3 days, every 2 days.
Sometimes hourly.
Yes, maybe hourly, hopefully hourly. But what would work for you to get information to a website that would then be disseminated through all of these communities? I mean, you have limited resources, I assume, as we do too. So what kind of a burden would that be to get news of your activities to into a clearinghouse? Let's not all speak at once. And I'm sorry I have my back to you.
I have a comment.
Yes, please. Mary.
I've been noticing in my inbox, there's a lot of alerts from the Democrats and other organizations asking for donations now. It's become a little obsessive.
Yep.
But when you've got such a broad range of issues, I think you should find a way to identify by priority what your e-blasts are about, because it just makes more sense, because we're all doing so much in so many different areas.
Hear, hear.
Good point, good point.
So we have had the opportunity from time to time to align with another organization to sponsor a meeting with two organizations. Would it benefit your organizations to align for a particular focus with other organizations if we had a collaborative of many organizations that we could feed out the message to the people that you want to reach? Is that a benefit? Speak up, because we need to hear your response before we go forward.
I think so. I think it's beneficial for all of us to come together, because that's what we're doing right here. We're all coming together to help each other out. And the more people we get involved in our issues and get them to know about them, the louder our message will be, whatever that might be, whether it's health, whether it's equal pay, whatever that might be within women's rights and feminism. It's better to just come together, but I would say it would be more in specific topics and issues. Like you were saying, if it's something related to health, then let's get together, women health organizations or men that are supportive of these issues and come together and maybe create an event or send out the information, but it could really work out.
And I'd like to add, I was just thinking when you were asking this, I don't think I've ever seen anything about the issues that all women have in common. For many women, housing, climate, health, aging, but they're not for all women. And I don't know how we begin to approach how we can, come together based on the concerns and issues that we share.
Regardless of age.
Regardless of age or ethnicity, or, but
Good point.
what are those issues? And I think most working women do have the issue of equal pay, all right? But for many of Latina women, you have the issue of at least getting minimum wage, okay? So if we could somehow begin sorting out what the issues are that we would be best at approaching as a complete group.
Well, and the worst part of that is the profound sadness that the umbrella organization for women has folded at this time when one could assert it was needed more than ever.
Yeah.
So that's,
That was the NC, the National Coalition of Women's Organizations. Council, sorry. Council.
Who knows?
Yes, so, for me, I think it's multiple things. And one of the most important is just diversity.
Is what?
Diversity.
Yes.
Being in this room, and I've been here before, I feel like women of color are not at this table. We are marginally at this table. How do we change that?
How do we change?
Get more
Yes.
chairs.
So, so I think that's a conversation we can have. We do need to have a strategic recruitment process, reaching out to those groups that house Latino women, African American women, other minority women. So we need to have that strategy. Then the leadership also. They are not just coming to the table to sit and not be leaders. So the leadership of the organization will need to change as well to be able to accommodate women of color. I think we are at a point in our lives where I thought that the women's movement fought for my rights and I don't have to fight as much. Although I come from Kenya where we haven't won the battle, and I thought with America we were going to have the first woman president and all of that, and it collapsed.
We did too.
And but the most painful thing is the impact of the policies of this administration on women's lives. I think, and we know that women voted for this administration. Let's not be foolish and say, oh, women, we voted for Hillary. A lot of women voted for Trump. Why? How did we fail to engage them to see that they are putting their own lives at risk? And I want to be honest here and say, why women? Because 94% of black women voted for Hillary. We know 53 or 57% of white women voted for Trump. Race issues, xenophobia played a critical role in how white women voted this time. And that's a conversation that needs to happen at this table. If we don't have that conversation at this table, we're just treating the symptoms of our problems.
Okay, now I'd like to say something here because I was one of the few women that did know that Trump was going to, and I didn't vote for him. Because 8 years ago, and I'm telling you, the Watergate was follow the money, follow the money. This is follow the media, follow the media, follow the media. And 8 years ago, when he decided to do Celebrity Apprentice, I turned to my husband and said, he's going to run for president. And everybody said, oh, that's stupid. I said, no, he's going into media to reach middle America on TV. Yep. Now, I'm preaching to the dead here sometimes because you won't do public access. You won't utilize it. But you go down to the DC station and you can have your own show.
So you see,
I'm sorry. I'm so angry because 8 years ago, I'm not upset with you. I'm just like, I've been yakking and yakking for 8 years saying, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And now it's happened and he's going to try to take this public access platform away, saying the taxpayer dollars paid for this and nobody used it. And he's absolutely...
Clarify that the
Clearinghouse on Women's Issues is a 501c3 organization, and we have to be very mindful, although we have been engaged in conversations that we might become our spin-off a 501c4. What that means is that as a C3 organization, donations to our organization are tax deductible. Donations to 501c4 organizations are not, but those organizations are able to engage in political advocacy. 501c3s can provide education on issues, but we have to be very careful. There's a line that's
A bright line.
well, no, it isn't a bright line. It's a smudge
there is
line.
anything else.
Right. There's a line, and the line, I just want to make everybody understand that right now this organization is a 501c3. The reason why I say the line is smudgy is some people think it's bright, and there are organizations like League of Women Voters who have two 501c3 and C4. Between you and me, the IRS doesn't have enough funds to enforce it.
That's true.
And who's policing it?
That's true.
I mean, who's going to, so, but I just, as the lawyer in the House, I want to caution everybody to be very careful.
But I have some history with this, through the 501c3s and 4s. And most people do not realize that C3s...
Would you be sure to speak up so...
I'm sorry, yes. C3s can actually lobby.
Yes, you can.
But only for a certain amount of your budget. But if your members lobby and doesn't cost you anything, they can lobby all they want. Okay?
Not
So-
for political candidates.
No, not for political candidate, no, but for issues, okay? So you can write letters, you can testify, you can go visit people, and if you're all doing it as volunteers, you can do it till you drop dead because you're so tired. But the minute that you are paying someone to be a lobbyist, then that has to be reported, the time involved has to be reported, the amount of money used has to be reported. And as long as you don't ask someone to vote one way or the other, it's all advocacy. You can provide all the education, advocacy education, all you want.
And you
But you
can
can
write
say-
white papers.
And yes,
submit them to
Absolutely.
senators and
Yes.
congressmen.
Can
absolutely.
I ask a question to the lawyer? You can say, vote for people who will respect women's rights. You're not mentioning somebody's name, but somebody, you're educating people what is at stake on women's rights. Right now, it's birth control. You know, even without mentioning the side that has decided to take our birth control away from us, we can say that is wrong, you know, so.
That's a point well taken. And
Yeah.
that's exactly where you can continue to advocate on issues and on positions, but not on a particular candidate, and not seek a vote
Political outcome.
or total support for a particular person.
So I'm still lost now, because what's that got to do with you getting on public access and saying anything you want? It's not costing anything. You can say anything you want. Nobody can edit you or monitor you. You can say exactly what you said here today.
You'd be perfect there.
You can go have your own show, right, and say, hi, welcome to my show, and here's how I feel. And no one can tell. Now, if he takes it away, then that platform doesn't exist, and then you will have fed fake news that is controlled and they can edit it. Right now, those platforms are, you own it. You get up there, it's like a soapbox. You can say anything you want. You don't need funding. I mean, you do need, if you're in front of the TV, you need to know how to host, and if you're behind it, you need to know how to run a camera. But basically, the platform is free, and it's bipartisan, not, there's no funding. You don't need
Well,
money.
if you're, as an individual, as Sarah pointed out.
Yeah, as an individual.
You can advocate.
Absolutely.
But if you represent an organization, you should be.
But you don't have to represent an organization. You
Time
can.
is running short,
Okay,
and we
just-
have one comment here.
Okay.
And did somebody back there?
Anyone else?
Go
I was
ahead.
wondering if there's a way to also just build on
A
strengths.
little louder.
I was wondering if there's a way to also build on strengths that already exist. I mean, to be honest, the set of people in this room are not necessarily the ones that are in the spaces that are very current or using the channels or media that a lot of young people are using. I mean, the whole, for example, the UN Association kind of went through this whole phase the last few years to revamp their entire membership to be largely millennial. And it's been extraordinary, and it's transformed the organization. So I think there's a shift that needs to happen. And what I'm wondering is just if there's a way, the monthly space of having people come speak to different issues and inviting people to come and participate in that, I think is a great service. It's something that's on my radar, but the topics and the speakers who come are not always relevant to some of the populations we've mentioned right now. And I wonder if there might be an advisory board maybe made up of a more diverse set of people who can help inform those topics, who comes to speak, do more outreach to get young people. That way a base could be grown, and from those monthly gatherings, more word could go out. Just building on what is already being done by CWI, but in a way that maybe is more attractive to people and more inclusive. That was just my thought.
Thank you, that's a wonderful
It's a
thought.
very good important.
But let me ask how you actually carried out that program to enlist a different generation, a millennial generation.
Sure, so I am not involved with the UN Association, although a representative from our office attends regularly, but he was just narrating that shift that's happened, and I was just sort of using that as symbolic of a number of organizations that have been there, over the years and done incredible work, but are now trying to shift gears, be more inclusive, recognize that a lot of the issues that people of color and other have been talking about for a long time need to be center stage, and a host of different things. So, I mean, it may be helpful to even invite someone who is a part of that process to hear what that involved.
We learned that at one of the meetings on communications that millennials and young people don't go to the traditional press to get news. They go to podcasts. And there's just a new way of communicating that most of us on the board and around the table just don't use. I go to podcasts now since I've heard it, and it's very dynamic.
Okay, Holly had her.
Oh, well,
hand up.
this is really the same kind of issue. That just to reiterate that there's strength in numbers, and so what you want to do is try to increase numbers, just engagement. And I was just going to bring a supporting idea from Montgomery County, Maryland. Now, I was
the past president.
I was past co-president, and the new co-presidents are much younger, and they have already started having a weekly podcast. I had to have instruction on how to access the weekly podcast, but very exciting, and that's what they'll be looking at, and we should too.
There's also Twitter, there is Instagram, there is Facebook, there's also social media.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we've experienced this a lot already here as well, and particularly working with our committee on women in psychology. So when we're trying to open up these issues to early career professionals, we have a meeting. It's always encouraged that the more distinguished member bring a younger member or an early career member, just to facilitate that conversation, because there can't be two conversations going on. But one thing we've also done in the public interest directorate is start using some of the social media platforms, so blogs, Instagram, Twitter, and we encourage our interns who come in, pick an issue that's going on in the office, and put this in a language that the millennials understand versus, this researchers speaking to researchers, speak to the general public, and just try to speak to each other so the older generation is learning from the younger generation, so that everybody's having the same conversation instead of an either or type of.
So that's what I have a YouTube channel with 1,250 of these shows on there, and when I edit the show, it goes out to every social media, Instagram, Pinterest, you name it, it goes out. And that's what I'm saying, is that's to get creating it in the public access station, but then putting it out on YouTube where it goes out internationally to everything. But you have to utilize the media that way, whether it's podcast or whatever.
Can I add one more thing
Yes,
to it?
please.
This is aside from APA, but my daughter is a recent graduate of the Duke Ellington School of Arts. So some of these schools have programs that have literary media studies, and these kids, they are on fire right now.
Yeah.
So to kind of touch into some of them, they're very aware of what's going on. So to remember that there's a voice there as well, and it's time to grab them now.
Thank
That's
you.
what I did yesterday.
Harry, was there a hand down here? Okay, Harriet.
I was just going to tell you that I get Women's Health magazine. Always worried about health as you get older. And in that Women's Health magazine, it tells you how to be an activist. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Choose one cause. Go to Capitol Hill. Show up in person. So it is so important that all of us, no matter what our main focus is, personal health, these are going to show up of how to do it. I just wanted to point out, several years ago, I was invited with the newspaper USA, Today, to hand on the torch to younger people to become activists. So there were 5 or 6 of us who had worked on the streets and so on. And we literally had given torches. The young people did not show up to receive it. And I understand it, because after your day's work, you want to bathe your baby at home, or you want to take a course to increase your credentials at work. Meetings meetings are very hard for young people to come to. So we do Instagram, Facebook. We do need new media to work for us, because we can. At this meeting, how many of you? We had a woman who used to come from the NIH here, and finally her boss says, "Listen, if you're going to come for a 2-hour meeting, you have to take each 2 hours as vacation time." Okay? So it's a problem of getting people.
We need to get back on topic because we only have a few minutes.
Right.
I wanted to mention, in conjunction with Loretto, that we have a date in July to go take a look at the DC
Chill down a little bit.
public access station for DC. And I think that would be a wonderful opportunity to have each of your organizations interviewed on that once we get a feel for it and are able to get that going. And I'd like to hear from a couple of the smaller organizations. I'm assuming maybe the Baha'i or the Women in Science, or not, for example, as large as AAUW or some of the other organizations. What kind of framework would be helpful for a smaller organization in particular?
Well, I can speak.
Yes.
I am the president of the DC chapter of the National Conference of Puerto Rican Women, and although it's a national organization, I'm president of the DC metro area chapter. And we are transitioning into social media. The organization was founded in 1972. Finally getting the Facebook page together, getting a website, and all that's going into it. We have a brand new board of mid-career professionals that are very big on women's health issues, especially with the crisis in Puerto Rico. What would help us is sort of guidance in this. I am not someone that studied political science. I have not been really involved in policy, but there are issues that really affect me and my community. And I stepped up to the plate, so this is a new world navigating for me. From getting conference rooms to doing events, because I might have the speakers and the experts, but I don't know, and I don't have $10,000 to like book a place in a hotel or meeting space. So those kind of like basic logistics that might be simple things for other organizations that are established are obstacles for me to get all this. I've had people come, oh, we want to do this on Latina issues, on diversity, on education, internet security, and all these other things that affect us, but I just don't know the logistics sides of how to get these things done. So
that would be a service.
That would be a
this
service
framework or this
that could help out.
clearinghouse
I'm sure other organizations, could probably benefit from that as well, as we're coming in new to this.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Yes, Mary, and then we'll come over here.
After womensmarch.com, I noticed that I was getting information from actionnetwork.org. And they have a toolbox on there, how to do your own website, how to do your own blog, how to do your newsletter, how to picket effectively, making phone calls, what to say. it's a whole list of activities that you can do to help get your organization organized. Action Network.
Terrific toolbox. But for the local, on the local level, assistance with logistics or listings of venues that are no cost might be helpful for us. Yes?
Along the same lines, merging the last two comments, and I think it was you that said that one of the organizations you belong to has a partnership with older members and younger members. Within this body, we could do a partnership with more established agencies and emerging agencies. And so there could be that type of hand-holding or mentorship amongst each other, so that if we had a conference room that was available and you wanted to do programming, we could offer you the conference room, or we could go through the programs in the box that would be applicable to whatever organization.
That's a great idea, thank you. I've not heard that before, but I think that would be, and certainly, we always talk about women mentoring, so we have women's organization here, and then we'll come back to you. And then we'll need to wrap it up.
I think when perhaps you were speaking about issues that are in common right now, or that can sort of be a touchstone or a unifying sort of set of things that we could work on together. There's a way in which women's organizations are very siloed in what they do. There's a clear divide between those focused internationally and domestically. But I think given the moment, there are a lot of conversations about common concerns and supporting each other. And so I think in-person spaces continue to be very valuable. And so just to reiterate what I said before about making use of the monthly discussion, maybe not necessarily always to have speakers, but even to convene a space where representatives of organizations can come. And it may be that a good way, or one way of doing outreach, is to also express that interest in convening that to coalitions that exist. So for example, there's a gender-based violence coalition that focuses more internationally, but as a member of that, I know there have been conversations about them wanting to be sort of to keep up with what's going on domestically. And so if there's a space where people could come on a monthly by monthly basis and hear what's going on and inform their network, then that's useful. And I think others would also benefit from that. But it needs to be sort of a vibrant space with a fair representation, and so some thought would need to go into that, but really making the most of those in-person sessions to allow people to come together on common issues. There's a real interest for that. I've heard it expressed in a number of spaces.
Thank you.
I think there's also need to reach out to the faith community. There's a very vibrant women's movement within the faith community. Maybe even a lot of us in this room belong to certain faith communities. So reaching out to them and welcoming them to the table. And then the schools, like GW Women's Center, if you're looking for the younger generation, that you go to where they are. You go to GW, you go to American University, through your organization, and through other organizations that are working with young generations. So I would really welcome that opportunity, especially of exploring how to bring the faith community women to the table, because that's what I do. I work with religious movement, the General Board of Church and Society. And on the African side, I think the migrant community also is another community that we need to bring to the table. I'd be happy to work with you to make sure that that happens.
Hi, my name is Tatiana Rapinski. I'm the team leader for AGLE, and we're based out of Baltimore, Maryland. This competition is designed to make it easier to monitor your health at home. Our team is an interdisciplinary team consisting of students from a variety of majors: mechanical engineering, software engineering, science, biomedical engineering. There's two advantages to being a student team. We are doing this project not for a paycheck or part of a company. We're doing this because we're wildly enthusiastic about the project, and I believe that that enthusiasm and excitement is going to translate to our competition submission. Secondly, because we're new to the field, we're not bound by the status quo in healthcare, and as a result, we're poised to create very innovative solutions. The greatest challenge has been to develop a system that is consumer friendly. We are conducting usability testing. We are developing prototypes and then testing them to see how usable they are, how a person using them feels about it, and taking that feedback to modify our system. Our technology is a multi-part system designed to both tackle the diagnostic challenges as well as the usability specifications. The diagnostic component makes use of things like microfluidic chip and color change test strips. We have a vitals monitoring device, which is continuously worn, and then the smartphone application, which serves as the user interface. Our technology could really change the way that consumers view their own health. So if they're feeling sick, they can immediately know if it's something that they need to be worried about.
My name is Elia Aronoff-Spencer. I'm the team leader of the Distributed Health Labs at UC San Diego here in the United States, California. So in 2006, I showed up to a small hospital in South Africa on the border of Mozambique. And I showed up, and instead of giving me a stethoscope, they gave me a cell phone. And it had the phone numbers of all the people on there like me. And in the middle of the night, when you're the doctor in the hospital and you really don't know anything, you don't know what you're doing, you could call John gynecologist and say, listen, a woman has come in and she's sick and I have no idea what to do. And they would just give you what they had. It was the best information they could give you. And you start to see healthcare as an information finding problem and then an action problem. They have about $48 a year to spend per patient on healthcare. And for instance, the WHO recommends in a country like that that you test people for HIV at least once a year. The end-to-end cost of an HIV test, the cheap one, is about $24. So you would spend half of your money just testing the patients. So it's not realistic at all. And so it is those two circumstances, my experience there and basically the need space there, which is make stuff that works, that we really can afford, that our team is built around. And our lab, the Distributed Health Labs, we're trying to make a product or a technology that really enables people, end users, patients, where they are to take care of themselves, to know more about their health, to have actionable information that makes their lives better. The biggest first hurdle was having anybody in our circle believe that this is possible. And I think the big one is that we maybe don't have the same financial trajectory as some of the other teams, and it changes your ability to deliver. We know that, but it also changes your incentives and therefore the product you build. There's the hurdle of building this for the prize versus building it for what goes on after, before, and through the prize, which is our own lab. The core technologies we have are open source and public. That's not great for a competition. And we haven't released or really even fully settled on what the tricorder Qualcomm entrant will look like. But we know what we call our global tricorder, which is our stack. We know what that looks like. And we're going to have to reconcile those two. But I think in the end, there's pretty much zero losers here. I think everybody who showed up today kind of already won. I mean, this is you got to the Olympics, it's not a who won, you know.
My name is Dr. J. Fizdoswell. We are Team Juxtopia Imhotep from Baltimore, Maryland, USA. Team Juxtopia Imhotep is comprised 100% of students. Most of the students are from the city, Baltimore City, Maryland. The students' age ranges from middle school, high school, as well as college-age youth. Currently, we have 5 students. The advantages of having a student team is that, one, they're hungry. They really want to do something that's very innovative, think outside the box. The pure innovation, eagerness, and propensity to learn is there. The disadvantage is that they do not have the experience as a seasoned professional. The work with the Google Lunar X Prize Challenge has definitely influenced our work with Juxtopia Imhotep. There can be crossover technologies from the Google Lunar X Prize competition to the Qualcomm Tricorder Challenge, specifically in the sensing technologies. Matter of fact, our 16-year-old student, the youngest student on the Google Lunar X Prize team, came up with her own spectrometer design to be integrated into the robot and identify water on the lunar surface. My mother was an educator, my father was a social worker. I'm the only child, so they put a lot into me to engineer the person that's talking to you today. Had a great experience growing up and was exposed to so many things that I think contributed to my intellectual, social ability, and providing that same experience for other youth that otherwise would have had that in their own family. I think it's a contribution that all of us should think about making, especially creating the next generation of youth that should be better than the previous generation.
I'm Austin Russell. I'm the team leader for Luminar Technologies, based up in the Bay Area by Stanford in the US. I started at a really young age, sort of getting really interested in some aspects of computer science and software development. Then sort of moved on to some of the electrical engineering, computer engineering aspects of that. Did a bit of independent contracting at this time. This is a few years ago when I was really young, about 10 or 11 at that time. And since then, though, and over the past 4 years or so, I've gotten really into specifically photonics. We can add whole other dimensions of information when you manipulate light over just purely, let's say, acoustic or electrical phenomena. For the past few years, I've been focusing on developing some various new imaging technologies. They're called LiDAR and hyperspectral imaging systems, both of which are high resolution and in real time. The LiDAR system that I was developing, it's able to measure not only sort of an X and a Y axis of a field of view like a regular camera, but also a Z axis, as in the depth of each pixel within the individual image. So you have an entire high resolution depth map that can span distances even up to a kilometer. The second sort of imaging modality that I also we're developing is a real-time hyperspectral camera system that's actually able to identify the molecular composition of all the objects within the field of view completely in real time. It's able to send out a very short pulse of light into the environment to 2 million different locations, all in 1/60th of a second. There are current systems that exist that do this. However, unfortunately, they're extremely costly, often tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Also very bulky, about the size of, maybe this large, the size of a mini fridge, you could say. So right now we have it down to the size of a few pennies. I definitely see how a lot of these technologies that were originally presented, decades ago, some of the original Star Trek episodes can actually be realized today. It's definitely sort of a great foreshadow for what's to come.